Ever heard of a goddess so captivating, even the gods themselves, they couldn't resist her?
Yeah, I think we all know who you're talking about.
We're talking about Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love, beauty, pleasure, and even procreation.
That's right.
And today we're going to be diving into some ancient hymns and epic poems and a little bit of Roman commentary to uncover her story.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. What do you think? Like, where should we even start?
Well, I think one of the remarkable things is how much her influence just sort of like weaves its way through so much of Greek mythology.
She is everywhere.
Yeah, you find her in the Trojan War.
Oh, yeah.
You find her in like the very nature of desire
Yeah.
all over the place.
Yeah. And one of the things that really jumped out at me when I was reading through these sources is like the mystery surrounding her birth.
Oh, totally.
We actually have two completely different versions.
Yeah, that's right.
Hmm.
It's almost like the Greeks themselves couldn't quite settle on a single origin for such a powerful figure.
All right.
On the one hand, we have Hesiod's account. In a theogony, he describes Aphrodite emerging from the foam, literally the Greek word aphros. And this foam was created when Cronus castrated his father Uranus and tossed those, well, let's just say essential parts, into the sea.
Okay, so we're already off to like a dramatic start.
It is a very visual entrance,
Right.
would you say?
Yeah, and like, I don't know, born from the essence of creation, but also violence at the same time.
Yeah.
It really sets the stage for her complex character, I think.
It does suggest that she's this force of nature, very much inseparable from that raw creative energy, not simply a daughter of Zeus like so many other Olympians.
Right.
And then there's this other version of her birth that we get where Homer, in the Iliad, describes her as the daughter of Zeus and Dione, a titaness.
Yeah.
And so this one places her more within that traditional Olympian family structure.
Okay.
It presents her as powerful, but with a more sort of like official lineage among the gods. So considering these two contrasting origins, do you think the Greeks viewed her as a primarily destructive or creative force?
Well, that's a great question. It seems like they couldn't decide. I mean, you have this very like dramatic, almost violent birth from the sea foam, but then this very like civilized parentage with Zeus and Dione.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think both of those stories highlight the duality of her nature.
Okay.
She embodies both that raw, untamed power of creation, but also the refined elegance of Olympus.
Yeah.
She's not easily categorized.
Yeah.
And that might explain why she pops up in so many different kinds of myths and plays such different roles.
Yeah. She's definitely a more intriguing figure because of that.
For sure.
And speaking of intrigue, there's no denying that Aphrodite's beauty was legendary.
Absolutely.
The sources all agree that even the gods themselves, they were just susceptible to her charms.
Yeah, it's funny how that's a recurring theme.
Yeah.
That even the most powerful stoic gods, like think Zeus, Poseidon, they're captivated by her allure. There's this sense that love and desire embodied by Aphrodite can sometimes override even divine will.
And in the Homeric hymn to Aphrodite, it really does paint a picture of her irresistible allure.
Yeah.
Like they describe her radiant beauty and these captivating garments woven by the Horai, the goddesses of the season. It's just,
Right.
I feel like no one could say no to her.
Yeah. It's interesting because it does mention that only three goddesses, Artemis, Athena, and Hestia, remain immune. They represent chastity, wisdom, and hearth and home, respectively. So it kind of suggests that those specific aspects of life were perhaps the only forces that could withstand Aphrodite's influence.
Wow, that's a really interesting observation.
Yeah.
While her powers are strong, maybe there were some things even she couldn't influence.
Right. It's not that she didn't try.
Oh, yeah.
Which brings us to one of the juiciest parts of her mythology.
Let's hear it.
Her marriage to Hephaestus.
Oh, that man.
It's a case of divine intervention gone wrong.
Yes, for sure.
Wouldn't you say?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the sources all describe it as this arranged marriage orchestrated by Zeus, who was probably just trying to control her influence.
Right.
And keep some semblance of order on Olympus with all the gods falling head over heels for her.
Yeah.
But as we know, things didn't really go according to plan.
Indeed. And let's not forget that Hephaestus, while incredibly skilled as a craftsman, was also considered, you know, the least attractive Olympian.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of power dynamic at play. Was Zeus really concerned with Aphrodite's well-being, or was this a strategic move to kind of limit her influence over the other gods.
It really makes you wonder about his motivations, for sure.
Totally.
And we know Aphrodite, being Aphrodite, she wasn't going to be tied down that easily. She had a very, shall we say, active love life.
That's one way to put it.
Yes.
I mean, her affairs were legendary. And not just with mortals.
Yeah.
She had relationships with pretty much every Olympian.
Wow.
With the notable exceptions of Zeus and Hades.
Okay.
And maybe her most infamous affair was with Ares, the god of war.
Oh, right.
They were quite the passionate pair, literally, in some depictions.
Right.
I mean, who could forget their very public capture in Hephaestus's cunningly crafted bronze net?
Oh, yeah.
That story always gets me.
Yeah.
You have Hephaestus rigging their bedchamber with this invisible net. That traps them in the act. And then, to make matters worse, he summons all the other gods to witness their predicament.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, imagine the gossip on Olympus that day.
Oh, I'm sure the nectar flowed freely.
Ideally.
While they all gawked at Ares and Aphrodite tangled up in that net. It's all described in vivid detail in Homer's Odyssey.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
I think the story is so rich with symbolism, it goes beyond this simple love triangle. I think the net, crafted by Hephaestus, it symbolizes the constraints of marriage and societal expectations. But on the other hand, you have Aphrodite, whose actions, even when caught, seem to suggest no regret. So it makes you think about those consequences of, unchecked passion, and even raises questions about divine justice and defying societal norms.
It really does. But, she didn't limit her romantic escapades to the gods.
Yeah.
She also had some very famous mortal lovers.
That's right. And those relationships often had pretty dramatic consequences.
Oh, absolutely. It seems like every time she fell for a mortal, there was bound to be some kind of divine drama.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe we should take a closer look at some of those stories.
Let's do it. It could be interesting to see how her relationships with mortals differed from her divine affairs.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so where do we even begin? Aphrodite had like a whole roster of mortal lovers.
She did.
But I think one of the most well-known stories has to be her love for Adonis.
Yeah, it's such a tragic tale.
It is.
Just infused with all of these themes of beauty and mortality, that cyclical nature of life and death.
Right.
Adonis, this beautiful youth, he captures the attention of both Aphrodite and Persephone, queen of the underworld. And the fact that these two powerful goddesses are fighting over who gets to spend time with him, it really is a testament to his allure.
Yeah, it's interesting how, his beauty becomes this point of contention between these two completely different realms.
Totally.
It's almost like a tug of war between, the world of the living, represented by Aphrodite,
right,
and then the realm of the dead, embodied by Persephone.
Exactly. And ultimately, Adonis meets a tragic end.
He does.
He's killed by a boar.
Right.
And it's said that anemones, those delicate red flowers, they sprung forth from Aphrodite's tears of grief.
Oh, wow.
So you have that imagery, again, adding another layer to the myth.
Yeah.
Linking beauty with fragility and just the ephemeral nature of life.
It's a powerful image for sure. And it also highlights that even a goddess as powerful as Aphrodite,
yeah,
she can't escape the pain of loss and grief.
Yeah, everyone's subject to it.
Right. And speaking of powerful, her affair with the Trojan prince Anchises led to some pretty significant consequences, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, their relationship resulted in the birth of Aeneas,
right,
who went on to become the legendary founder of Rome.
Right.
And we even have the GreekMythology.com source mentioning that Zeus got involved, punished Anchises for his involvement with the goddess.
It's interesting how, her actions
yeah,
can have these ripple effects that extend so far beyond, the immediate situation.
Right.
Her love for this moral man ultimately leads to the founding of, one of the most influential empires in history.
Yeah, it's correct.
It makes you wonder if, the Greeks saw these stories as a cautionary tale about the power of the gods and the potential consequences of interacting with them.
It's a fascinating question. Because, their myths often served like a didactic purpose, teaching moral lessons and reinforcing societal norms.
Right.
But in this case, it's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
Because Aeneas is a hero in Roman mythology.
Right.
And his divine lineage is like a source of pride. So it's a more nuanced situation than some of her other interactions with mortals, which often do end in tragedy.
Yeah, that's true. And speaking of tragedy, we can't talk about Aphrodite without addressing her wrath.
Oh, no. Here it comes.
Right.
Yeah.
While she's often depicted as, like, playful and even lighthearted, she wasn't afraid to punish those who crossed her or scorned her power.
Indeed.
Yeah.
The sources are full of these tales
Yeah.
of mortals and even gods who suffered for rejecting her advances or disrespecting her. And, I think that reveals a very potent message
What's that?
that love and beauty are powerful forces, but they can also be very destructive when defied or weaponized.
I mean, her punishments, like, often seem really harsh.
Yeah.
Do you think they reflect a broader theme of divine justice in Greek mythology?
I do think they reflect that,
Okay.
but perhaps not in the way we might initially perceive it.
Right.
I don't think these punishments were necessarily about, like, fairness in the modern sense.
Yeah.
I think they were often about maintaining this cosmic order. And Aphrodite, as this embodiment of love and desire,
Right.
she played a vital role in that order.
Okay.
And disrupting it, whether intentionally or not, that had consequences.
So it's less about individual transgressions and more about maintaining, like, the balance within, like, the cosmos.
Exactly. I think the Greeks saw the world as very interconnected,
Yeah.
and the actions of both mortals and gods had repercussions.
So if we look at someone like Hippolytus,
Yeah.
who chose to dedicate himself to Artemis and rejected Aphrodite completely, his punishment, it wasn't just about her hurt feelings.
Precisely. I think it was about disrupting that natural order,
Okay.
rejecting this fundamental force in the universe that Aphrodite represents. This act had to be addressed to kind of restore balance.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. It really shifts the focus from, like, personal vendettas to a more universal concept of order and consequence.
Yeah, and it emphasizes that the ancient Greeks, they viewed the gods not as just these anthropomorphic beings with human-like emotions,
Yeah.
but they were forces of nature.
Yeah.
They represented these fundamental aspects of the cosmos.
Okay.
And their actions, while sometimes seemingly harsh, were ultimately about maintaining that balance of the universe.
It's definitely a perspective that's so different from our modern understanding of morality and justice.
Totally.
But it adds another layer of depth to understanding Aphrodite and her role in the Greek pantheon.
Yeah.
She wasn't just a goddess of love.
Right.
She was this force that helped to shape and maintain, like, the very fabric of existence.
Absolutely. And speaking of shaping the fabric of existence, there's another tale involving Aphrodite that has monumental consequences.
Oh, yeah.
It all started with a wedding, a golden apple, and a very unwise decision by a mortal prince.
Oh, the Judgment of Paris.
There you go.
This is where things get really interesting. Talk about a story with, like, far-reaching consequences.
It's one of the most iconic stories in Greek mythology.
Yeah.
And it all revolves around this seemingly simple beauty contest. Eris, the goddess of discord, she's feeling snubbed because she wasn't invited to a wedding feast on Olympus.
Oh, no.
So she decides to stir up trouble by tossing a golden apple inscribed with the words, "To the fairest," among the guests.
And of course, this sets off a divine rivalry with Hera, Athena, and naturally Aphrodite,
Right.
each claiming the apple as their own. And nobody wants to decide who's the most beautiful. So they turn to a mortal, Paris,
Right.
a Trojan prince, to judge.
It's interesting to consider the motivations of each goddess. Hera, as queen of the gods, she probably felt entitled to the title.
Yes.
Athena, goddess of wisdom and strategy, she probably valued beauty as a form of power or influence.
Right.
And Aphrodite, well, she was the goddess of beauty.
Right.
So it's almost expected that she would be a contender.
Yeah.
But what really stands out to me is her cunning.
Yeah.
She approaches Paris and she offers him a bribe,
Oh, boy.
the most beautiful woman in the world, as his wife.
Classic Aphrodite.
Right. Using her powers of persuasion.
Yeah.
She appeals to his desires to kind of secure his favor.
And it works.
It does.
He awards her the golden apple, choosing Helen of Sparta as his prize. The problem is, Helen is already married to King Menelaus.
Oops.
Right. So this seemingly small decision sets in motion this chain of events that culminates in the Trojan War, one of the most famous conflicts in all of Greek mythology.
Yeah, you can't get much bigger than that.
No. It really is like a great illustration of how seemingly insignificant choices can have just colossal, unforeseen consequences.
Absolutely. And it highlights Aphrodite's influence on fate and destiny. Even her actions that are driven by seemingly petty motivations can really shape the course of history. It makes you realize that the personal and the cosmic are intertwined.
Yeah.
And even the gods can't always predict the full impact of their actions.
We've talked a lot about, her romantic escapades
Right.
and her tendency to, well,
Get even.
get even,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But what about, her overall role in the Greek pantheon? What did she represent to the ancient Greeks beyond just being the goddess of love?
That's a complex question because, Aphrodite, like many Greek deities, wasn't confined to a single simple role.
Okay.
On one level, she embodies the pure joy and beauty of love.
Mm.
The passionate, all-consuming kind that inspires great art and heroic deeds.
Right.
But she also represents the darker side of love.
Yeah.
Jealousy, possessiveness, even vengeance. And, for the ancient Greeks, these were all part of the human experience of love.
So it wasn't just about romantic love.
Right. The Greek Mythology.com source mentions that she was also associated with fertility and procreation.
Oh, okay.
So that emphasizes her connection to the continuation of life itself.
I see. So she had a hand in both, like creating life, but also influencing how that life unfolded, for better or worse.
Exactly. And beyond that, she was associated with pleasure and beauty in this much broader sense.
Mm.
Think of her connection to flowers, to music, even to the sea.
Right.
She was a goddess who really embodied those sensual and aesthetic elements that bring joy and delight to human existence.
It really does seem like her influence, really extended beyond the realm of romantic love.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
She was a goddess who celebrated life in all its fullness, with all of its complexities and contradictions.
Okay, so we've discussed her birth, her lovers, her wrath, even her role in the pantheon. But what about, her impact on the mortal world? How was she worshipped?
Well, her cult was incredibly widespread, with temples dedicated to her all across Greece.
Yeah.
And these temples were often sites of great beauty and ritual.
The Theoi Project source mentions that one of her most famous temples was in Cnidus,
Yeah.
which housed this renowned statue by Praxiteles.
Oh, that's right. That statue was said to be so lifelike and beautiful that it captivated all who saw it.
Wow.
And then you had another famous temple on the island of Cythera, which was believed to be the first place she stepped foot on after rising from the sea.
It makes sense that she would have so many devotees. Who wouldn't want to appease the goddess of love?
Right.
Especially considering her tendency to,
Hold a grudge.
hold a grudge, exactly.
Yeah, better to be safe than sorry.
Right.
But beyond just appeasing her, I think there was this genuine desire to, seek her blessing. People hoped to experience the kind of love and beauty that she represented.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to the enduring power of Aphrodite's myth. Even today, she continues to fascinate us.
Yeah.
To inspire us.
Right.
And perhaps even to make us a little wary of crossing her.
A little bit.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the most interesting or surprising thing we've learned about Aphrodite today?
I think what continues to fascinate me is the way her myths reflect that inherent duality of love itself.
Yeah.
It's a force that can bring immense joy and fulfillment, but it can also lead to pain and jealousy, even violence. And I think Aphrodite really embodies that duality in a way that's both captivating and unsettling.
I completely agree. She's just a reminder that love is this powerful force that can shape our lives for better or for worse.
And perhaps that's one of the most valuable takeaways from our deep dive into Aphrodite's world. Love is a force to be respected, understood, and approached with both caution and enthusiasm.
So true. Now, before we wrap up our exploration of Aphrodite, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay, sure.
Something to consider as we kind of move on from this deep dive. We've talked about how her influence is so vast.
Right.
But did you know that some scholars believe her origins might predate ancient Greece?
Oh, really? That's intriguing. Tell me more.
Yeah, there are potential connections to even older goddesses, like Astarte in Phoenician mythology and Ishtar in Mesopotamian culture. They share some striking similarities with Aphrodite in terms of their domains and even some of the myths surrounding them.
Yeah, that raises some fascinating questions.
It does.
Does this suggest that Aphrodite's story was adapted from these earlier goddesses? Or is it a case of different cultures independently arriving at similar archetypes to explain the power of love and beauty?
Exactly. And if she does have these ancient roots, does that change how we perceive her story? Does it add another layer of complexity to her character?
It's definitely food for thought.
Yeah, I think it is.
It reminds us that even in a deep dive like this, we've only really scratched the surface. There's always more to discover, more connections to make.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes exploring these myths so endlessly rewarding.
Yeah. What about you? Was there any particular myth or aspect of Aphrodite's story that really resonated with you?
Yeah, it really is amazing to think about how these stories connect
Yeah,
across different cultures and time periods.
totally.
It really highlights how, like, these fundamental human experiences, love, beauty, desire, they've
Right.
been explored and reinterpreted throughout history.
Yeah, for sure.
As for what resonated with me,
Yeah.
I think it's just the range of emotions associated with her.
Right. She's not just about romantic love,
Right.
although those stories are definitely captivating. But
They're very fun.
there's so much more to her than just hearts and flowers.
Yeah, I agree. I think we see the depth of her emotions in the myth of Adonis.
Mm.
Her grief over his loss.
Yeah.
It's palpable, it's real. It reminds us that even a goddess can
Oh.
experience, the pain of heartbreak and mortality.
Yeah. It's a reminder that, love and loss are intertwined.
Yeah.
And that experiencing one often means facing the other. And, she's not afraid to show her anger,
Yeah.
to seek revenge when
Yeah.
she's been wronged.
That's right. Her wrath is a reminder that, love, while it's beautiful, life-giving,
Yeah.
it can also be a source of intense pain and destruction. And
Right.
it makes you think about, the darker side of human emotions and their potential consequences.
It's almost as if the ancient Greeks were trying to, capture
yeah.
the full spectrum of human experience within her myths.
Yeah, I think so.
She's not just this, one-dimensional figure representing a romantic love.
Right.
She's complex, capable of both great love and terrible rage,
Right.
and everything in between.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it speaks to how the ancient Greeks viewed emotions in general.
Yeah.
They weren't something to be suppressed or ignored.
Right.
They were these powerful forces
Mm.
that could shape destiny, inspire art,
Yeah.
even topple empires.
Wow. It's a powerful concept when you think about it. I mean, we often try to, control
Yeah.
or, downplay our emotions.
Yeah.
But the Greeks saw them as, these fundamental aspects of existence.
Yeah.
Forces that could influence the world around us.
Exactly. They understood that emotions, even the difficult ones,
Yeah.
are part of what makes us human. And perhaps that's something we can learn from today.
Mm.
By understanding and acknowledging our own emotions, recognizing their power to influence our actions,
Right.
even the lives of others, we can navigate the world with more awareness and empathy.
That's a great takeaway. It seems like her myths
Yeah.
offer more than just entertaining stories.
Totally.
They provide insights into the human condition that are still so relevant today.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up their deep dive, I'd like to leave our listener with this thought. Aphrodite, in all her complexity,
Yeah.
offers a timeless reflection of the human heart.
Mm-hmm.
She embodies those joys and sorrows, those contradictions
Yeah.
that really make us who we are.
Yeah.
And perhaps by exploring her myths, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
That's beautifully said. I think that's the perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of Aphrodite.
It's a pleasure.
Until next time.